Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Friday edition of the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a part of our dream. You helped to make us complete. And we appreciate that because without you, we would just be here talking into mics. So you guys make it real. And thank you for all that you've done. All of you guys out there that are listening and that have spread the word and told people about the show and made recommendations and let your friends and social groups know. It's really showing and it's really growing, and it's all because of you guys. So thank you so much for doing that. Before I go any further, let me first introduce my good friend and co-host, Mr. Don Longbeard.
Good evening. What's
wow.
going on? Okay,
you're already fuzzy.
I'm muting you again.
I'm muting you.
It's a mutiny.
It's a mutiny up in here. Yeah. We got some kind of short in the cable. And all right, let's try it again. Can you talk now?
Hi.
Much better.
Thank you.
You are now live and part of the show, Don.
Yeah, I think where the line comes into the housing for the connector, I think it's a bit wonky.
It could be. It could very well be. And you know, this isn't state of the art here in the Portal studio,
it's very
but
state of the heart.
It's the only art that we got. So it's it's the state of our art, if that makes sense. But how's your week on, Don? You're doing good?
You know what? Tomorrow's Saturday. I don't work, so I'm feeling good.
That is always a good thing. It's always good to be able to kick your feet back and relax and unwind. So congratulations, and then I'll expect you on time tomorrow night.
Yeah, well, I was on time tonight, too.
You did good. You did good. I was really impressed.
Running out the door, I'm like, oh my God.
You did a fantastic job, and I'm really thrilled you're here.
Thank you.
Helping to carry the load that is the Portal, because it's not light and easy.
I'm excited to be here because I have not had a chance to talk with this gentleman yet.
Right, but before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, I do have a special announcement to make, and this is something I'm going to try to display it, and I don't know if it's going to show up.
This is awesome.
It really is.
This is awesome.
It's really something that's quite beautiful, and I just wanted to make it available to you guys, the listeners. This is it's I don't know if it's going to show up or not. This is a handcrafted solid wood Ouija board that was made by a craftsman friend of mine here in the community. Oops, I got it upside down. And it's absolutely breathtakingly beautiful, and he has offered to make it available to anyone that wants to purchase it. So it is available, and it also, I know there isn't enough light, and I'm going to have to make a promo piece for this tomorrow, but he also made a hand-carved planchette and its own custom box.
Oh, wow, I haven't seen that.
He made the box. I've never seen that before. It's all felt lined, ladies and gentlemen, and it's got this custom planchette in there. I'm going to try to see if this will show up. I mean, look at the carving and the detail in there. It's actually wood burning. It's not carving. I'm sorry. I'm misspeaking a little bit. But it's absolutely gorgeous and all hand done. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in having your own handcrafted Ouija board, let me know. You can email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and we'll see if we can find a home for this. I'd buy it myself if I could, but it's out there and available. But before we go any further, the gentleman that's going to be joining us tonight is somebody I've looked up to for a long time. He's probably the busiest man I know in the entire planet Earth. He is an accomplished documentarian, researcher, investigator. He is probably the most prolific documentarian of our time, and he is the founder and owner and operator of Enigma TV network. as well as Enigma Radio and so many other things. And if you get a chance, ladies and gentlemen, go over to enigmatv.com, check it out. There are documentaries on ancient civilizations, on ancient hidden technologies, on paranormal topics, on the Illuminati, the Cabal, the royal families, the conspiracies and hidden truths. This man is absolutely brilliant and has been a dear friend of mine for a while now, and I'm very pleased to announce Mr. Christopher Everard. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Brent.
Oh, we're so thrilled you're here. Thanks
Nice
for
to be on the
coming.
show.
Oh yeah, it's really great to have you here.
Yeah, it's it's good to be here, and thank you for the introduction. I've actually had stem cell therapy this week.
Oh wow.
Yeah, where they, I don't know whether you know how they do it, but you have to be injected into your stomach.
Oh.
And with a very, very big needle, and it leaves bruises. But when you buy like a salad in the supermarket, sometimes you get one of those furry caterpillars.
Yeah.
I've had the stem cells of furry caterpillars injected into my stomach.
Oh, what does that do?
It's actually the stem cells of the scrotum of these furry caterpillars, and I'm trying to propagate and grow eyebrows like Justin Trudeau. Except my ones will wiggle and I'll be alive, like having two caterpillars strapped to my forehead.
So they won't crawl down your chin or anything. Don's about falling over here.
Yeah. Only kidding.
Oh my God, you had me going. I'm like, stem cells? Really? What's going on?
I'm like, stem cells from the scrotum of a hairy caterpillar. I'm like, what the heck is that all about?
You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. That's a world exclusive.
Yeah. Well, I've put a post up on Facebook for this show. Usually we do get a few questions coming in via my Facebook page. But as I was saying before we came on air, I am banned from Facebook. But I've got a standard post now that I send to Mr. Fartburger and all the people at Facebook, which is basically stating international law. International law, which is the law in the United States, is the law in the United Kingdom and nearly 160 other nations, is that your freedom of expression is protected by law, both online and offline. And you are allowed to express ideas and opinions without interference in every single nation that is a signee of the International Convention on Human Rights. And each of those human rights, there's 30 of them, each of those articles or declarations of human rights form 30 international laws. And so when they block you on Facebook, when basically you send them a message explaining this, and then they kind of partially unblock you and allow you to still post on your own page. But we've got a crackdown. It's a Gestapo crackdown. It's nothing that we haven't seen in human history before.
Right.
It's it is definitely a it's a contravention of international law when they block you on Facebook.
No, I did not know that, and I think that's incredibly interesting. But do you think that there would be room then for some form of class action to that effect?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm launching actually a class action website.
Wow.
I've been developing it. It's like a social platform. It's a little bit like, a social media platform, but it has a kind of button on certain posts that says I'm in. And you just click I'm in, and it adds you to either petition letters that get sent off automatically, there's letters to the White House or letters to Downing Street, and then there'll be class actions as well. It's just basically to make things very easy for people, because people, they're under so much pressure. The New World Order is now, they're all frogs in a pressure cooker being slowly simmered and cooked.
Right.
And the cost of living is like a financial merry-go-round, and this merry-go-round is going so fast that once people hop onto this merry-go-round, they can't get off.
Right. It
And
is.
so you need a platform that makes it very easy for people to join class actions and to send letters to our beloved politicians who supposedly are meant to be democratically, respecting our rights.
Yes. And there's just so much effort by so many entities to control the narrative, and that's what's so disturbing is that they think in effect that they're suppressing ideas and they're suppressing the narrative to speak only what they approve and filter out what they don't. And you're right, it is. It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, we have had a huge amount of success as a global community of activists because I've played a role in Silvio Berlusconi basically losing his job as the premier of Italy. Remember, that guy owns a third of all the magazines, a third of all the radio stations, and a third of all the television stations in Italy and France. And I published his membership. I published the receipts that he received from the Grand Lodge, where he paid the Freemasons 150,000 lira to become a Freemason, and I exposed his complicity in allowing the Italian energy agency called Enia, who, they're part of the European Union, they're part of the superstate government. They were paying the Italian mafia to dump nuclear waste in the ocean.
Oh, wow.
So that scandal broke with a few other scandals to do with the Banga Banga parties or the Bunga Bunga parties, with these young girls shipped in to Silvio Berlusconi's villa direct from Morocco. And he went, and then I ran a campaign exposing Pope Benedict as running a cover-up when he was one of the cardinals, chief cardinal of Chicago. And we managed to get him to resign, which was pretty amazing because the Pope is meant to be appointed by God. Right. Obviously, God made a mistake there, didn't he? And then I've also exposed Pope Benedict's brother for sexually abusing choir boys. And then I moved on to Brexit, and we successfully managed. We had the Scottish referendum. I exposed how the Scottish referendum was rigged. Then I moved on to Brexit. We managed to get Brexit through, and we pushed David Cameron and his pig out the back door of Downing Street. And now we're working on Merkel and Theresa Mayhem.
Yeah.
That's our next targets.
Wow. That is so amazing. And I realize this is a show about paranormal and stuff, but you are absolutely part of something amazing going on. And how does that feel?
Well, it is amazing. Yeah, I get about 2 million emails a year.
Wow.
To give you some idea. I mean, obviously, it's gone past the point where humanly I can actually read them all.
Right.
But the reason I'm getting so many messages, and it's been like that for several years, is because of the power of documentaries. And I was making documentaries and I was making TV shows 7 years before YouTube was ever invented.
Wow.
And so, the thing about a book, and I do write books, is that is a fantastic medium because it sets up a personal relationship between the author and the reader. But when you make a TV show, that has this massive shotgun effect where, the difference is that you can impart a huge chunk of the information from a book in a 2-hour documentary film. And people can, make a cup of tea, put their feet up, and in that 2 hours, they can absorb that huge chunk of info. And that was the beginning, really, of this global awakening.
Yeah, no question about it. No, and the last time you were on, you actually explained how you were part of the pioneering effort to do things like what YouTube does, and way back
Yeah.
then. That's
Oh yeah, I developed with Apple the first streaming codec.
wow.
I mean, QuickTime didn't exist really. I mean, it existed as a kind of concept that Apple were showing at various broadcast shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember going to Apple, and it was on my birthday. This is in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Having a meeting with Apple, explaining to them, look, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what QuickTime needs to do. And there was a Scottish guy who's in charge of the QuickTime development team in Europe, named Scott. Funnily enough, and he was Scottish, and he kind of got it. He got what I was explaining to him,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd previously I'd had my own magazine publishing company. I built up this magazine publishing company in my spare bedroom. I started it in 1996. It was all about broadcast technology. So I already knew the bosses of lots of the companies actually manufacturing broadcast technology. And I put pressure on them to actually get this working,
Mm-hmm.
to get a codec that would play video on the internet. And then end of 98, beginning of 1999, I launched the first version of the Enigma channel, and I'd made these mini documentaries just for the website, and it was the first time people had ever seen video working on the internet.
That is awesome. Well, thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Yeah, definitely.
you helped to carve
Yeah.
our path for sure. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I launched the Enigma channel at the Royal Television Society,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember saying, put your hands up if you're from one of the big broadcasters, and nobody put their hands up.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that's strange because, Royal Television Society, all the big broadcasters should be here. It was about 300-400 people in the audience, and of course later on, about a week later, the Royal Television Society sent me a photocopy of the guest book, and everyone was there. London Weekend Television, ATV, BBC,
Nobody
but the
wanted to be
fuckers never
recognized.
put their hands up. Well, what they were doing is that they were sitting in the audience soaking up all the information, thinking, who the hell is this young upstart telling us that our industry is dead and everything's going to go over to the internet?
Oh, that's funny.
And then I was at the International Broadcast Convention in Geneva,
Mm-hmm.
on the shores of Lake Geneva in Switzerland. It's a massive show. It's sponsored by Sony. Sony's exhibition stand cost $1 million. It was a tunnel of,
Wow.
700 televisions. It was very,
Oh.
and Google were there. I mean, Google were just the two guys. I think they'd only just moved into offices. They were still, coming out of their garage phase.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up to me. They knew who I was, and they'd been onto the Enigma channel.
Oh, nice.
But did they offer any help? No, of course not. They all they did is they ripped off. When YouTube started, there was a huge amount of material that was ripped.
Oh no.
And you can see this in a movie called The Social Network, it's directed by David Fincher. And this is a great movie because it actually shows you the truth of how these social media networks were started. They actually hacked, they're cyber criminals, and they hacked and ripped the basic data to make their websites look as if they were busy.
Wow.
And there's a famous deposition from Steve Chan, who's one of the founders of YouTube, where he was telling staff to grab it and rip it, meaning rip DVDs and load them onto YouTube.
Huh.
Oh, my
And I'm
gosh.
quite safe in saying this because this is on public record, and it was part of a deposition which somebody sent me a copy of.
Huh.
Wow. That is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So, it's like the old days of the media. The gatekeepers of the media, you can see with Harvey Weinstein, is that we do have an internet version of what the old showbiz always was, which is, you had to wear the right socks and come from the right family before you had access to the media.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But luckily I started the Enigma channel 7 years before they even got their socks on, got out of bed, and realised what I was up to.
So the die
Because
was
there
cast.
was you have to remember that I had to design the streaming because the fastest modems were 56K.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
And then if you remember, in the early days of the internet, we got up to 56K modems, and then there was this hiatus that lasted for about 3 years before broadband was actually rolled out for members of the public.
Right.
I mean, they actually tried to stifle the internet right from the very first,
Wow.
from the first get-go. What they wanted the internet just be for government and for businesses, and they didn't want members of the public on the internet whatsoever.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the universities as well. Yeah.
Yeah, universities. Yeah.
With the gopher and back in those days.
I did teach at I've been a lecturer, which I don't like I don't like the world of academia, yeah, mind you, most of the university networks were actually closed loops.
Right.
So you call garden walled, and you couldn't actually get out onto things like the bulletin board network, because bulletin boards were, when I first started posting articles telling people about the history of the royal family, I used to post these articles explaining that the great uncle of Queen Elizabeth actually funded the First World War, and he was a British prince, and he'd been brought up on the Sandringham estate. Wow. And he was Queen Victoria's favourite grandson, and he was sent off to Bavaria to take charge of £3 million worth of land holdings and farms owned by the royal family at Buckingham Palace, and that he actually funded the First World War. And then 18 and a half years later, he funded the Second World War. And the first time I started posting these articles was when there was no Google. There was no search engines.
Right.
And there weren't really any websites. There was bulletin boards. So I used to post these articles on bulletin boards, and I used to get emails from people saying, oh, you'd make a great fiction writer. That's a great story you wrote.
Oh, jeez.
And they used to think that it was made up, like some James Bond novel.
Oh, jeez.
And that's how far we've come. So it's a major achievement.
It is. It is.
Because now people do realize that 99.9% of people that you see on television as a politician is a person who is self-interested and is there to promote their own bank account and their own career, and that politics is corrupt, the mainstream media is corrupt, and the BBC is corrupt, and they realize, now people realize that genocide has been perpetrated in South Africa, Australia, Canada. There's been multiple Holocausts, and they've mostly been created by the British royal family.
Wow. That is just
so
sad.
It's an amazing achievement, considering that we didn't really have the internet. The internet only really got started about the end of 1996. So that's 22 years. So it's a very, it's amazing, to have this social impact in 22 years. Previously, I mean, the Labour Party, which is actually run by a secret society called the Fabian Society in Britain, it took them 60 years before they managed to get a Labour government.
Wow.
So before they had any social influence. So give you some idea of, how much impact we've had. And then, of course, the paranormal exposing how the aristocracy and the richest people on the planet actually are running this global network of secret societies where their God is not the same God as the God that you see in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and that they actually worship the horned deity, which is this ancient, I mean, you can call it many different names, but essentially they worship, they've got a completely different spiritual paranormal worldview.
Mm-hmm.
I just made a TV show for the Enigma channel exposing Sheol,
Oh.
which is what the Kabbalists and the world of Jewish mysticism doesn't believe in good and bad or heaven and hell.
Mm-hmm.
For them, there is no heaven. There is just this underworld called Sheol, and it doesn't matter if you are a good person, and it doesn't matter if you're a bad person. As far as the teachings in Jewish mysticism are concerned, you always end up in Sheol. So
Oh.
what's the point of being a good person?
Right.
Right.
Might as well party on. But we're going to be heading to our first break, ladies and gentlemen. So we are just starting to cut the way. And now that you've had a chance to meet Mr. Everard, if you weren't familiar with him, I hope you can have an appreciation for all the trails this man has blazed.
Depth of work.
Yeah, the
Wow.
huge body of work and achievements that we all probably owe you at the very least a fine thank you, sir. But we're going to take our break. We will be back in just a couple minutes for more of the Paranormal Portal and Mr. Everard here on the Paranormal Portal. Don't go away. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and we are cooking the night away here on the Portal. Hope you're having a good time, and thanks for being here and being a part of what we're doing. So we are joined, of course, tonight by our special guest, Mr. Christopher Everard, and he is going to talk with us about a myriad of things, but one of which will be the Ouija board, which I think we'll get into now, if that's all right with you, Chris.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating subject. It's something which I've been researching for many years.
Yeah, that's why I was excited to have you on, and I mean, for any number of reasons, I would have you on just to hear what you're making for lunch. I mean, you're just an interesting guy, but
Yeah.
I know.
Well, I mean,
I know you've done so much research.
I started making the Spirit World series of films a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the interesting things about the Ouija board is that its history has been deliberately erased from public record.
Oh.
The history of even how it got its name is a mystery. But when I made the first Spirit World documentary,
Mm-hmm.
I'd already been researching the paranormal for several years,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been to Morocco. I've been all over North Africa, and I realized that there was a place in Morocco called Oujda. And Oujda is where the fakirs, these are nomadic kind of, they're public performance people. When they have street markets and camel markets and bride markets, they set up in the public squares, and they have snakes in baskets, and they play those weird reed pipes
Right.
that sound a bit like oboes, and they hypnotize these snakes. And they also allow themselves to be hypnotized by snakes as well. And these fakirs, that's where the word fake comes from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they do it for money. After they do these paranormal sort of public displays, and then they pass the hat round. And this has been going on since way before biblical times. I mean, this goes back, probably before pre-dynastic times of Egypt. I mean, it goes back into the mists of time.
Mm-hmm.
And Oujda is one of these market towns in Morocco. It's on the coast of Morocco where, they've been growing, kif, which is the traditional green kind of, it's not really a hashish, it's like their version of marijuana.
Oh, okay.
And that obviously also goes back into the history of mankind a long, long way. And they had a system of scraping out onto the sand a set of symbols. And some of those symbols did mean yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to have a snake. And they used to ask questions to the snake.
Oh.
And the snake's head used to point out certain symbols that they used to then interpret as an answer.
Oh, wow.
And that was happening in Oujda.
Okay. Oujda.
Oujda in Morocco, yeah. You can look at it on the map. It's Oujda.
Oh.
Wow. Okay.
So, once I'd realized that, I then realized, oh, right, well, this has got lots of parallels to how the Ouija board works.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's obviously, I think, where somebody's changed the name.
Right.
Okay.
It was probably called Oujda,
Oh,
the
okay.
Oujda board. But then, because it was marketed by games companies, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the world's most popular game manufacturers have been marketing Ouija boards. So some clever marketing person realized that Oujda was, the first part was oui, which means yes in French,
Mm-hmm.
and ja, which means yes in German.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So they made it the yes or the ya board. Because Oujda was probably too much of an exotic kind of word for it.
Right. Okay.
And but the actual the guy that actually patented, because it's patented. There's an actual patent for the Ouija board.
Okay.
His name was Mr. Bond, and he managed to get a patent for it. I think it was something like you can look up the patent for the Ouija board. If you type in February 10th, 1891, you can actually find a US patent for it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that guy, Mr. Bond, I think he officially said that it'd been some lady friend who came up with the name Ouija. But basically the way this all evolved is that speaking to spirits, especially speaking to the spirits of deceased parents and especially deceased grandparents, is the major mainstay of human civilization. The spirits and communication with our departed grandparents has really been the inspiration behind the great works. The spirits have always been there. They've always been the great influences of the greatest poets, the greatest bards. So the bards used to be, if you like, the jesters and the poets of the Druids.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have as a civilization, what's been given to us by spirits is incalculable, because the spirits are the ones that come to us in our dreams, and spirits speak in a symbolic language. They usually inject ideas into our dreams. Mm-hmm. And those ideas have then been, every object, every manufactured object on the planet began as an idea.
Right.
And spirits interact with us on the level of an idea.
Sure. So in the vein of a muse, right?
Yeah, kind of. Mm-hmm. Kind of, yeah. But if you look at I've just done a big TV special on the Enigma channel about Easter Island. Mm-hmm. And the Moai statues, the reason that they're important is because they contain the spirit of the ancestors, and they're called the Tupuna. And this is a common thing that you find all over Oceania, Melanesia, Polynesia, New Zealand, the Maori people. They built these totems out of stone or wood, and they were receptacles. These statues are receptacles for the Tupuna grandfather elder spirits.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, it's only recently that they realized that these busted up fragments of white and red coral that they used to find, sort of scattered all over Easter Island. Mm-hmm. It's only in recent years, since the 1970s, that they realized, these fragments of white coral, if you glued them together, they made eye shapes. And they glued one together in the late 1970s and realized, this is an eye. And those statues had eyes which can be inserted into them.
Oh, okay.
And they used to insert the eyes to allow the Tupuna spirits to see at certain festival times. Oh. And this is something that is, giving a statue, whether it's made out of stone or wood, giving it something like those eyeballs, or in Benin and the Ivory Coast in Africa, they would cook a special porridge made out of barley and rye, and it would have it would be a fermented porridge, so it'd be slightly alcoholic. And they used to cook this porridge, and they still do. They cook a special porridge just as spiritual food, and the statues for their ancestor spirits have cavities in the chest and in the stomachs with a little door on them. Huh. And they put a teaspoonful of this specially made porridge actually inside the cavity of these. They're called power dolls, which is a kind of Western, misinterpretation of their real name. Sure. They're called Nkisi Nkondi statues. Nkondi means within. Nkisi means spirit. So the name means spirit within, and they're given special food to really give the spirit something in exchange for giving the tribal community information. It could be about weather, it could be about rainfall, it could be about when to plant crops, it could be, all kinds of things, whether how to plan a battle with a rival clan, it could be anything.
Wow. So let me ask you a question about the Easter Island statues, and this is some legendary thing I heard as a kid, and it might even have been from a comic book, to be honest with you. But do those statues actually move? Are they moving towards the ocean, or did they at one point, or is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I remember reading in, you used to get these boys' adventure comic books,
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
and
that
there were these legends that they used to move around the island, and I remember reading that when I was a schoolboy.
right.
Who knows? Maybe they have been moving around the island. I mean, it's a volcanic island, so you can imagine that some of the Moai statues would have been pushed along with lava.
Oh, sure. Sure.
There is at least one Moai statue underwater, so it's obviously been pushed off the edge of the island somehow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can see that in my TV special. We go diving, and you can actually see a Moai statue underwater, which is quite a rarity.
That's amazing. Now, when you were on Easter Island, did you stay there overnight, or did you stay there for a period of nights?
Yeah, it's a very, very long flight. I went there in 2010 for the eclipse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've actually witnessed 4 major solar eclipses. You have to. I mean, the flight, it's so isolated. You're really looking at one of the most. I think it is actually. It's either Easter Island or the Pitcairn Islands. I get mixed up which one it is, but one of them is the most isolated civilization on planet Earth. And the thing is that the academic archaeological community have exerted their racism on Easter Island because they've so far refused to actually categorize the Moai statue builders as a civilization. The marker in academia is whether they have a written language. Okay, if you don't have a written language, then academic archaeologists just use words like clan or tribe. And it's really basically right now, here we are in the 21st century, and my TV special on the Enigma channel, it was only started streaming last Saturday, is the first documentary that shows you the Rongo language. There is an actual written language, and it's a hieroglyphic language. And my documentary is the first one to show you the Rongo wooden tablets.
Oh my
There
God.
are wooden tablets with lines of organized hieroglyphs, hundreds, thousands of hieroglyphs per tablet. Now, I want to ask you guys must have seen mainstream documentaries about Easter Island since you were kids growing up.
Yeah.
Sure.
Did you guys realize that there was a hieroglyphic language?
I had no idea. None.
Not at all.
There you go. You see, that is part and parcel of this archaeological racism that's been going on.
Gotcha.
That's horrible. But
And it stretches back to the time of the Victorians. The Victorians, you see, were basically grave robbers and asset stripping everything. It was a bit like the pioneering days of the internet in the late 1990s, where there was this internet land grab, if you like, for the most important domains like student.com and all this kind of thing.
Right.
Well, the same thing happened in Victorian times. As soon as commercial iron boats that could actually carry huge, heavy objects could be manufactured, those iron ships created a massive kind of history grab. And it was the royal elite,
Right.
Sure.
the royal elite of the French France has been a republic for a while, but there's still a French aristocracy, and there's still the remnants of the French royal family, the Italians, and most notably the British Bavarian royals and the aristocrats. They basically, once they could get heavy objects onto these iron boats, that was it. They went out across the world grabbing as much as they could. Hang on, I've got a wild cat.
That's quite all right.
I just want to let it out of the window because it's not a domesticated cat. Hang on, just a second.
By all means. So very interesting, and this is the.
I'm very sorry about this.
No, don't worry about it at all. We're fine.
He's herding cats.
There you go, gentlemen, ladies. It can be done. You can
herd cats.
You can actually herd cats.
What it is, guys, is that I live next to a forest. I've got no neighbours or anything like that.
Sure.
Nice.
And every now and again, you get these people, and they dump, they dump kittens in the forest.
Yep.
Yeah.
And over the years where I've been living here, I've been living in a forest near the beach for more than 10 years, is that unfortunately, it does come from time to time that you need to find homes for kittens that have been dumped in the forest. And now is one of those times.
Oh, well, it's good there's somebody like you out there to help collect them.
Yeah, I don't know whether you guys have seen the movie Borat. But the French attitude towards animals is there's a lot to be desired.
I have not seen it, but I've seen clips of it. But yeah,
Borat is a great movie. I love Borat.
Yeah,
I don't know if I could watch Sacha Conan. That guy just confuses me.
Oh, he's great. He's very, very funny.
Yeah, the clips I've seen have been hilarious. I just don't get to watch very many movies. But I love a good laugh, so I'll have to check it out for sure.
Yeah.
So you've been all over, and the reason I asked you about staying over at Easter Island was I've just heard that it's notoriously haunted. That there's so much spiritual activity going on there. That's it's pretty much off the charts, and I was just curious if you might have experienced anything when you were there.
No. I mean, I was extremely busy. I was only there for a couple of days, so
Sure.
I didn't, I suppose you would have to be there for quite a long time, and you'd have to sort of find a very quiet place so that if there was any spiritual activity, it'd come to you in your dreams.
Sure. Yeah.
Because, symbolism and injecting symbols and situational parables is how the spirits actually speak to people. And teaching you through karma, if you do something bad and then you walk through the door and you smash your head on the threshold of a door, or you have some kind of accident, the spirits tend to have this. Yeah, they either do instant karma or fairly fast karmic consequences, or they use these situational parables in your dream state.
Yeah, and so there is that where the dream symbolism comes in and dream interpretation. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very cool, and I hadn't really. I mean, I've heard people talk about getting messages in their dreams, but I've never had that happen to me, so I didn't really know what that means. I always just assumed that somebody appeared and said, "Hey, watch out for this," and but it's actually more symbolic. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, all of the great artists, communication with our elders and communication with our dead grandparents and our dead parents is really basically the mainstay of human civilization. It was only really the invention of television and the popularity of television in the 1950s. Up until then, the conversations with the dead was common.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't looked upon as being bizarre at all. And then came along the glitzy game shows with the girls in their glitter, gold lame swimsuits and bunny girls, and hey, you can win a refrigerator. And within 18 months, this family network of your dead grandparents speaking to you, and the Ouija seances and other different forms of contacting the dead, all of that was just washed away in this mass media.
It's a magical box.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think we can all agree that that mass media and all of the major networks have been probably more detrimental to the nuclear family than anything.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I mean, you guys have seen plenty of documentaries about Easter Island, and yet they never told anybody on any of those shows for years and years and years that there was a proper written language.
Right, and so I imagine that it has never been interpreted what was said on this.
It has been interpreted.
It has.
Amazingly, there was a series of interpretations that happened at the end of the 1960s. They, obviously there's lots of translation errors. One of the major translation errors of the Rongo language is that they misinterpreted the word holy with the word chicken.
Oh, no.
Obviously, it was meaning, like, it made every sentence kind of meaningless. Right. I can kind of understand it because chicken blood and the killing of a chicken and the slicing of the head off of a chicken and then soaking a statue in chicken blood is one of the mainstays of voodoo.
Right.
And voodoo is part of shamanism. Now, I know that there's lots of women wearing these rainbow tie-dyed caftans on Facebook, and they say, "Hi, I'm a shaman." And they've got pictures of leaping unicorns, and they don't like it when I say, "Oh, then you must know a lot about voodoo." And they go, "Voodoo? No, I don't like anything to do with voodoo." Because voodoo is part of shamanism.
Okay.
Voodoo is shamanism. Shamanism, that earthy magic, which is the interaction with the spirit world and giving, as I say, chicken blood as an offering to the spirits, so that the spirit can actually absorb the life force of that animal. That is something that goes so far back. It goes back into the times of the Neanderthals.
Oh, okay.
And that is shamanism.
Wow.
And so when they were transliterating the Rongo language from Easter Island, because we had the same, we do have the same situation with the pyramid texts from the Temple of Unas, where, the first translator was French. So they got the hieroglyphs and they changed the hieroglyphs into French. And then a German comes along and changes the French into German. Right. And eventually it ends up from German into English. Oh, okay. And that's why when you read the pyramid texts and when you read the texts of the Mayans and when you read the Rongo script from Easter Island, the sentences are all disjointed and sound weird. Is because that's Chinese whispers in terms of translation.
Gotcha. Well, that's very interesting.
But the essential history that is now revealed in my TV special, and you can see the wooden tablets for the first time on HD. It's all filmed in 4K, and this is the first time there's been a proper documentary showing you the Rongo wooden tablets from Easter Island. Clearly, where you can actually see them yourself. The creation myth is that Easter Island arose out of the sea. We know that's true because it's a volcanic island, and it was the first place where dry soil emerged after the Great Flood. And this is very important, obviously, because without dry land, civilization cannot evolve.
Sure.
And so the official creation myth is that the Easter Island arose out of the sea, and then a man who could fly came from the sky. And he came down, and he was the great teacher.
Oh, wow.
And he could teach people weaving, woodwork, stonework. And this has enormous parallels and similarities to the creation myths of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt, the first dry mound arose from the Sea of Chaos, and that's where Aten arrived. And he was a man god, and he taught people. This is exactly the same as Mali in Africa with Oannes and Dagon. He came out of the sea, and he was an amphibian man, and he taught us mathematics and astrology.
Wow.
And so the creation myths of Easter Island are almost identical in their general, their general story is the same as the creation myths of Egypt.
Wow. Well, fantastic. We're going to head to our break, ladies and gentlemen, and we will be back on the other side for more of Mr. Christopher Everard here on the Paranormal Portal. Don't go away.
Censorship and regulation is
play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping stars across my heart. Raging anger boils inside me as their lies keep falling apart. But I'm not broken yet. I'm not broken yet. I'm not broken I am finished with my silence. I am not a stupid toy. No more breaking me with kindness. Just you dance upon my joy. Leading me with empty promise. You're just another fucking mess. Taking off the slice of my sanity. Just make sure that you're well fed.
Truth Frequency Radio.
This looks extraordinarily bad.
They linger in a perpetual dream state, a nightmare from which they cannot wake. I can't see you, Mommy. Where are you? I've never sensed anything like it. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that's different from themselves. Her life force. It is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeist are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are of fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and we are here burning the night away with Mr. Christopher Everard of the Enigma TV network. Welcome back, Chris.
Hello, Brent. It's nice to be here. I liked your intro with the soundtrack from the Poltergeist movie, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I did the music and got the clips from
I suppose you guys know that many of the cast members are dead.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah, and they died in, well, they didn't just die. Some of them were murdered.
right. Okay.
Did you know that Dominic Dunn, who played the eldest daughter in the first Poltergeist film, she died in 1982. She was aged 22. She was strangled by her boyfriend.
Oh.
Oh, no. Oh.
And she's buried in the cemetery, the same cemetery as the actress who played her younger sister.
Oh, Heather O'Rourke. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both dead. And there's other deaths as well associated with cast and crew on the Poltergeist film. Very, very similar thing happened with The Exorcist as well, and The Omen.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, when you make these movies where you're basically opening up a portal where millions of people then become reconnected to the paranormal, but they get reconnected down what I call the crooked path.
Oh.
That has usually some kind of debt, which it needs to be paid in blood, and that's the danger of making these horror films.
Wow.
I know there's lots of people who don't like watching horror films, and I used to be like that before I started making documentaries, and then I sort of thought, well, if I'm going to make documentaries about paranormal, I'm going to have to watch all these movies. And then I started digging down into the history of films like The Exorcist, and I discovered a very interesting documentary with Peter Blatty, who wrote the original story that The Exorcist film is based on.
Sure.
And he he rented a little kind of bungalow in Hollywood, and he had a Ouija board set up 24 hours a day.
Oh,
And the spirits were actually basically helping him write the story.
Wow.
oh dear God.
Yeah.
Wow. That's not a recipe for
Yeah.
bad, is it?
Yeah, well, they came up with a good story. I mean, I do enjoy watching really well-made movies about the occult and the paranormal, because when they're really well-made, it can really be a very useful lesson to show people how dangerous it is to mess around with these paranormal forces.
No, that's a great segue into my next question, which is, what do you believe of the Ouija board? Do you think it's inherently evil? Is it neutral, or is it just good?
Yeah, it's the most dangerous way of making any kind of spiritual contact. And the reason for it is because it's an open door.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look at society in general, you've got good people, you've got bad people, you've got indifferent people, people who are inert, who don't mean good or bad.
Right.
And that's what the spirit world is like. The spirit world is actually populated by mostly spirits of people.
Mm-hmm.
There are other spirits there who have never been in a physical incarnation, and lots of those are dangerous.
Yes, I would agree.
And so, you see movies. There was actually a movie made only 3 or 4 years ago called Ouija, which I think it was funded by Christians, and I think they did a very, very good job. It's a very, very high quality movie.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just called Ouija. It's really basically opening the gates and allowing any kind of spirit to walk into your house.
Right.
Now, that's totally different to proper high ceremonial magic. The secret of magic is spiritual communication. But they use astrology to choose the most auspicious days of the year or nights of the year to actually communicate with a specific spirit.
Right.
And the secret to high ceremonial magic is that when a spirit presents itself to the magician is all prepared, and the magician has tests, and the spirit is tested to make sure it really is the spirit that they've requested, or is it an imposter?
Oh, wow.
Now, with the Ouija board, of course, none of that happens. You get these teenagers, very stupid. They sit there, is there a spirit in this house? Is there a spirit in the house? And, straight away, the glass starts moving, because obviously there's been we've got 7-8 billion people on the planet now.
Yeah, there's gotta
And
be
that means that
somebody
the spirit world is infested with billions of spirits. And as I say, I mean, look, even a modern house built in the 1950s, there's people who've lived, died, been born as babies, even in a house as new as the house from the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, part of my house dates back to the 5th century, to the 15th century.
Wow.
So can you imagine how many births and deaths there have been in most people's houses, especially in Europe?
Oh, no. Yeah.
And spirits tend to cling to certain premises. So if you just open up the portal and say, is there a spirit in this house? Obviously, the glass is going to start moving fairly quickly.
Yeah. That makes sense. Very true. That's a good point, and I imagine. Well, I mean, I believe, like you said, there are those beings that were never in a body. They're never have been human. They're just some kind of entity, and other.
Yeah.
Maybe they're elementals. Maybe they're demonic. Maybe they're something else. But
well, a lot of them are demonic, and they're called the Kilipoth in Jewish mysticism. The word Kilipoth means shell or husk. And they were created, at the birth of the universe. They predate even the cooling of planet Earth. And they are very jealous. They're jealous of humans because we inhabit human bodies where we can enjoy sex and we can eat and we can walk and we can, sail boats and fly planes and do all this amazing stuff, whereas they're just very weak, non-physical entities. And it's these entities that, going back to the time of King Solomon and even before, going back to the time of the Canaanites, Judeo-Babylonian Satanism has always summoned these Kilipoth because they've got a chip on their shoulder and they consider humans to be abominations of creation.
Okay.
And so, are you saying that these Kilipoths are the ones that have most access, say, through the open doorway of a Ouija?
Yeah, I mean, if you get one of those coming through, you're in trouble because the likelihood is that they won't go away.
So would the Zuzu phenomena be one of those, or is that a deeper thing?
Yes, there is a global infection of Ouija boards which has been going on now. As far as I'm aware, it's been going on around 15 to 20 years. and it's called the Zozo infection. And you can see videos of people. They're asking questions, and all of a sudden it starts going Z-O, 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 Z-O. That's it. You're not going to get any further than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's apparently it's characterized by very aggressive movement of the planchette as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is an entity called Zozo or Zoso, and that was the occult symbol that Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin chose for one of the Led Zeppelin album covers.
Yep.
And yeah, I I remember that album, and I remember that symbol.
Have that album.
Do you still?
Oh yeah.
I love that album, and it's wonderful. But certainly, there's no question that especially bands like Led Zeppelin, I think they're very, very widely rumored to have been involved in some kind of
absolutely
different practices.
Absolutely, yeah. There is there's a very interesting set of audio recordings from a guy called John Todd, who used to be a record executive for Zodiac Records, and he became a born-again Christian, and he actually went around giving lectures in churches telling people that the entire modern music industry was basically full of ordained witches.
Ordained witches, huh?
Okay.
Have you heard those recordings?
No, I have not.
Oh my God. Well, he names names, he names David Crosby of Crosby, Stills and Nash as an ordained witch and all kinds of things. They had a special room at some of these major record labels where the master tapes used to be cut into the master vinyl disc or the master metal disc. And before the disc was then used to manufacture millions of vinyl discs, they used to take it to a coven of witches that had a special room in the headquarters of the record label. And they used to do a black magic ritual and imbue the masters with, some kind of occult power. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, Satanism in the mainstream media it's the religion of Hollywood.
Oh, sure. No, we had a question in the chat room. What was the name of that those tapes that or how can people find that?
You can see John, if you type in John Todd on any search engine, John Todd Confessions, Satanism, Music Industry. If you do a search, you'll come up with them.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. Oh, I'm amazed people don't know that.
Here it is. Yeah, John Todd.
You found it? Okay.
Director, choreographer.
Let me see if I can find it as well. Can you put
Beyond the Legend? Yeah, as soon as I find a good one, I'll drop it into the chat room.
John Todd.
Demons Behind the Music. That's a YouTube video.
That's it?
There. Yeah.
That's it.
I'm just going to see if I can find a link to put it up.
John Todd explains how demons are in the mainstream music.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I see the link for it as well. I would put it up, but it would autoplay, and so I'll just pop a link.
I got it.
You got it? Okay.
I got it.
Okay, thank you.
And
that's very interesting. I did not know those were out there. That's really cool.
Yeah, there's something like 3 hours of audio recordings of him, talking about his time when he was a top record executive, working for lots of the top record labels.
Very interesting. No, it seems like history. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Seems like history is definitely shows a rhythm to the spirituality of I don't necessarily want to say occultism, but it's spiritualism. Spiritualism kind of comes up and is widely practiced, and then it's shunned, and then it comes up again and it's widely practiced and embraced, and then it's shunned, and this seems to be a pattern that continually repeats and repeats and repeats.
Yeah.
Very
interesting. I agree.
Like the 1800s seemed to be a real resurgence of spirituality and people having seances, and I'm sure the Ouija board showed up in many of those as well. But then there was a great shunning of it as, people seem to migrate back to the Christian, holistic values of Christianity.
Yeah. Well, the Ouija board was, as far as I'm pretty sure, it was banned in Australia. It was either banned in Australia or it was banned in New Zealand, one of those two places, because there was an enormous Ouija board craze. I think it was in Australia. People were committing suicide based on information that they were given by the spirits.
Oh, my.
People were saying, spirits were telling people that they would die in a car crash, so they would just kill themselves.
Oh, God.
Huh.
Wow.
All kinds of weird stuff going on in Australia.
Yeah, well, yeah. Australia's a pretty unique place. I'll give it that.
Oh, yeah.
But, I think if anybody would base their life direction on what a piece of board with some letters on it says, they probably got a lot more things wrong with them.
You're gonna have to. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it depends on the information, of course. Once a spirit starts imparting information which only you personally know,
Becomes an addiction.
especially if it's like family secrets or where, certain things are hidden, and you discover, something that was hidden, and you think, oh my God, this, I'm really tapped into something here. People develop a relationship with spirits. The spirits actually leverage a lot of trust from people, and that's how people go down the crooked path, because the spirit then starts asking them to do all this very, very sick stuff.
Right. So, and there becomes a war of will at that point. And
well, like I say, the spirit world is populated by the spirits of people, and you get good people, you get bad people.
Mm-hmm.
People lie, and so therefore spirits lie as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
And we've certainly covered that on the show in terms of hauntings, that, in a lot of hauntings, these were people, and maybe they're very attached to the house, and, so if they start haunting, it's because they're really not happy about something going on, or they want to let you know about something. And
yeah.
And the best way to deal with it is respectfully, and, just say, these are my rules, and, if you respect that, that's great. We can live peacefully. If not, then we're going to have problems. And generally, most hauntings clear up just by themselves with a little respect.
Yeah, and you'll see that mainstream religion has, the main, Judaism, Christianity is a spin-off of Judaism, and so is Islam. Mm-hmm. And so to keep the monopoly going, especially the Vatican, where the Pope is meant to be the only person on the planet with a hotline to God, mm-hmm. To try and keep the exclusivity and keep the donations rolling in, they've told people don't ever get involved in the paranormal, which is a bit of a joke, considering that all the prophets were actually speaking to spirits.
Very true.
What a joke.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that's very true. But then, it's that whole idea of a patriarchal system of control is, what it became. And unfortunately, once they basically define the feminine as subjective to the masculine, and it's just it's no different than politics anymore in a lot of cases, which is really unfortunate.
Well, that's right. I mean, the Roman Empire just changed its name. They rebranded themselves as the Holy Roman Empire.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, really?
The system of Caesars became the system of popes.
Yeah.
And, paganism and this pantheon of different spirits and this pantheon of gods. And you have to remember, many of those gods are incredibly horrible kind of misfits. Mm. You can see in my Fallen Angels TV series on the Enigma channel, I go to a deconsecrated church in the south of France where they dug up in a field in France all of the gravestones of the Roman leaders, the Roman the top centurions and the Roman Caesars, somebody had collected their gravestones where they'd actually carved these gargoyles, and they were the gods of the Roman Empire. And you can see that on the Enigma channel.
Wow.
And the French government bought this collection from a farmer who discovered all of these stones buried in a field in France. And, typically the French government have created this satanic kind of slideshow, turned it into a kind of museum, put the museum inside a deconsecrated church. And it's one of the most satanic, eerie experiences ever, because they turn all the lights out. It's pitch black, and they do a laser show that features the Killerpoth spirits and the old illustrations from a lot of the illuminated manuscripts from the medieval era. Wow. It's very, very spooky.
Yeah, that is really spooky.
Yeah, you can see all that on the Enigma channel, enigmachannel.com.
Yeah, there's so many things you can see there. I mean, that's the beauty of the Enigma channel, is that you've really created this whole treasure trove of so many different topics and subjects.
I mean, I have to say that it's a good job I did create it, because there's been a massive crackdown on YouTube in recent years. I mean, a lot of stuff has just disappeared, and I don't really see very many people discussing this very often, but there's a mass of video clips that have all been cleaned off of YouTube. And of course, the channels have been deleted, and the people that originally uploaded a lot of that stuff, they have life bans on their IP. Oh, and people get jobs, and they have babies, and they have families, and so they never re-upload the material, or because they had this fallacy that they thought, oh, well, I've uploaded it onto YouTube and it's going to be safe and it's going to be there forever. They lose the original material.
Right.
People move house. There's a huge amount of stuff. I started archiving online videos even before YouTube began. There were people uploading video clips to bulletin boards, and I started saving them. That's back in the year 2001, 2002.
Wow.
And YouTube wasn't launched until 2005.
Yeah, you must have a hell of a collection then.
I have, yeah. I've got tens of thousands of hours of material that's not on YouTube at all. And in today's climate, wouldn't even be allowed on YouTube, especially if it's, you can see with the whole thing with Pizzagate, very obvious that those emails that were acid washed do have invitations to do with people like Marina Abramovich. Her Twitter handle was Marina666, and she appears on the BBC, and the BBC say, "Oh, you're not a Satanist, are you?" She says, "No, of course I'm not." Well, what's she doing with the Twitter handle Marina666 for? And then Mark Zuckerberg. He turns up, he's sweating in this TV interview. Oh, take your jacket off. Okay, I'll take my jacket off. And he's got the Star of David with 666 written in the middle of it, embroidered into the back of his jacket.
Oh, geez. Wow.
This is, the horned deity, the great horned beast, the so-called 666, his number, the number of the beast, blah, 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 that you see in the book of Revelations. This is one of the oldest spiritual entities which fuels this global network of secret societies. And a lot of those secret societies use Jewish mysticism. They use the Kabbalah as the key to accessing these very ancient spiritual forces. So it's no wonder that you get, 666 and Judeo-satanic influences amongst, look at Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne has released his own version of the Ouija board.
Is he really?
Oh, yeah. You can buy the Ozzy Osbourne Ouija board, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I had no idea.
I think Marilyn Manson also brought out his own Ouija board. I could be wrong about that, but I think he did.
Yeah, that one makes sense. I guess Ozzy makes sense too. I mean, Ozzy loves the shock value of it as well. And Of course, they're
Yeah.
laughing all the way to the bank, because you put their name on anything,
And it just goes through the roof.
yeah, it's just that whole genre. But
Yeah.
very
I don't
strange.
know how they stand with the patent, because as far as I was aware, maybe I think the patent lapsed, but there's definitely a patent on the Ouija board that dates from the year 1891.
Yeah, I found it and posted it in there about the story about Elijah Bond was his name.
Elijah Bond, that's right.
Right.
I mean, I dare say, I'm not absolutely sure, but he was probably Jewish. He was probably a Kabbalist, I would presume,
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we're going to take our last break, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll have another half hour with Mr. Christopher Everard before we're all done here tonight. So don't go away. We'll be right back for more of the Paranormal Portal.
Oh, it seems to have gone quiet. Oh, there you go.
welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for the last half hour of our show tonight with our special guest, Mr. Christopher Everard of Enigma TV and Enigma Radio and all kinds of things. This is a pretty amazing man. But thank you again, Chris, for being here and being a part of our show and taking the time.
That's right. It's a pleasure. It's very early in the morning here. It's 6:30 in the morning.
Wow.
So I'm one of those people. I need at least 90 gallons of coffee to get going. And when we had the anti-Trump news at the top of the hour, I didn't go and make new coffee, so I'm beginning to flag now.
Sorry.
I need at least 90 gallons just to get dressed and get out to the car. And then if I actually have to go somewhere, like, more than just like stumbling around the local street market, I need at least 150 gallons.
It's rocket fuel. I require quite a bit myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, I thought we'd take this last half hour and just let you tell us what's going on in your world, if there's any projects coming up you want to talk about or anything that you want to bring to the listeners.
I'm doing this TV special. I'm doing 2 series at the moment on the Enigma channel. The first one, Forbidden History, is really, it's just basically very spooky moments in history that the mainstream media have deliberately, not told anybody about. And it's about how the world wars, the First World War and the Second World War, and tens of millions of people were murdered as the result of the British royal family. I'm making, this is a TV series, but my aim, my ambition is to take all of my research from this Forbidden History TV series and turn it into a motion picture, into my own war movie.
There you go.
Because my version of the war is the truth. Because Himmler was a chicken farmer. This is absolutely true, but he was actually the godson of Prince Heinrich of Bavaria. And Prince Heinrich of Bavaria was the nephew of the Duke of Altenburg, and the Duke of Altenburg had actually sponsored Adam Weishaupt, who was one of the founding members of the Bavarian Illuminati. The Duke of Altenburg gave Adam Weishaupt a house and actually funded his writing of 3 books. One of them was called An Apology of the Illuminati.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, I've got these naughty kittens here. And, so all this, the mainstream media, what they like to do is they like to laugh, as if the Illuminati is just some conspiracy theory.
Right.
But it really did exist. It had very, very prominent members. 2 of the prominent members, Catherine the Great of Russia. That's one. Wow. And the other member, which a lot of people is very, very much swept under the carpet, is the Marquis de Sade, whose name inspired the term sadism.
Right.
Oh, okay.
He was a member of the Illuminati as well. So my war movie would have Himmler as the godson of Prince Heinrich, and Hitler was a bum living on the streets. He tried to get into art college, but he was rejected because his paintings are pretty dire. He used to go around with long hair. He was living rough, and he used to blowjob homeless people to get money.
Oh, jeez.
In hostels.
Oh, no.
And he taught himself how to do, kind of public speaking, because he used to stand on street corners in Austria, because obviously the most amazing thing about Hitler is he wasn't even German, he was Austrian.
Right.
And he used to give talks, about what it was like. He was blinded as a soldier in the First World War. And he used to pass the hat round after giving people these speeches. And he was hired, basically, because he was pretty good. He had the common touch, and he used to electrify people with the way that he used to tell stories of what the First World War was like. So he was hired by the Duke of Saxe-Coburg. His name was Prince Carl Edward Saxe-Coburg. He was Queen Victoria's most favourite grandson. And he funded the Nazi Party. So the idea of a master race and all this kind of thing came from the Duke of Saxe-Coburg, who was a British prince. He was born and grew up at Sandringham, and that my war movie would show exactly what was going on. I mean, look at Dunkirk. What a joke, you know. Dunkirk, we just had this massive Hollywood film. My question is this: what were 400,000 British soldiers all doing, all concentrated on one beach as sitting ducks, with no artillery, no air support, and no ships to take them away? That was obviously all planned. You know, what was I mean, my war movie would have the Queen, you know, in Buckingham Palace Gardens when she was 6 years old, being taught how to do the Heil Hitler salute. And there's a home movie from Buckingham Palace showing exactly that.
Yeah, I think I've seen stills from that.
Yeah, probably on my Facebook page.
Yes, I'm sure that's right. Yeah.
So, you know, so that's one thing I'm doing. It's called Forbidden History. If you go to enigmachannel.com, you can, you know, get a, you know, join our global kind of family of viewers. We've got subscribers that originally subscribed in 1999, and they've kept their subscriptions up ever since then.
Very good.
And they, you know, if anything happens, like, you know, because you get servers that go down over the years.
Sure.
We had a server go down. This is about 7 or 8 years ago, and we had to manually restart, you know, a couple of hundred of these subscriptions. And people were sending me emails saying I couldn't do without it.
Wow.
That's
It's like,
outstanding.
what happened? I couldn't log in, you know.
Right.
So that's one thing. I'm doing a new episode of Fallen Angels, which is a mini-series which I started at the beginning of this year. And then I've done a TV special about Easter Island. And I've done this, well, it's the latest installment of this series of documentary films about the spirit world. That's out, and I've done. It took me 2 years to compose the music because I compose all the music for my films as well.
Right.
Wow.
And I'm just rebuilding my studio because I've got a new audio mixer, and anybody who knows about audio gear is when you change the mixer, it's like you basically change everything in the studio.
Yeah, it's heart surgery.
Yeah. So it's quite a big job, and the mixer is enormous. It's 7.5 feet long.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
$25,000.
It's the mixer. I don't. Do you know Portishead?
Yeah.
The band Portishead. They make very spooky music.
Yes, they do.
They made a track called Mysterons, and they made this album called Dummy, which is very spooky music. Portishead. And it's a solid state logic console, and I bought it from those guys.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's the mixer that Portishead have recorded on it, and the Stereophonics, and Massive Attack, and a lot of very influential people have recorded on my desk.
Wow.
Oh, very nice.
That's
But as I say, when you take your old desk out, it's not like, you know, you can just wheel it out and wheel the new one in. It's because all of the connection wires and the patch bay all have to be resoldered.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's got to be a mess.
You know, it's like you have to it's like laying down on the ground with a soldering iron with a chart. And it's like being Albert Einstein with solder.
Right.
Trying to work out how to get your studio all back working again.
Well, my hat's off to you. I don't know. How many tracks is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's 90 channels, and it's a 5.1 quadraphonic desk.
Jeez. Oh, my God.
So it's a big job, you know.
No, that's beautiful.
And the channels have built-in compressors, which is really what I wanted. But nowadays, if you want to do music and you want to do Dolby surround sound for documentaries, you basically burn up a huge number of channels, because once you've got a channel set up nicely, you don't want to change the knobs around.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is, with doing it the way it is now. So, yeah, I've taken 2 years doing the soundtrack, and I've recorded real musicians, percussionists, flute players. I've recorded flute players from Japan, flute players from Egypt,
Wow.
and flute players from Easter Island, and they're all featured on the soundtrack of my new Spirit World film.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. Wow.
Yeah. I've mixed it all together, and it's all very, very, it's very, very, it's like the original earthy, shamanic. It's music from the heart of planet Earth.
Oh, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's,
fantastic.
you have to do that. I mean, to put something across, cinematically, and it's all been filmed in 4K. I made this movie all in 1080.
Oh, did you?
And then I went back and I refilmed a lot of stuff in 4K. And when I first started this movie, we had drones, but the drones weren't as good as the drones which we have now.
Uh-huh.
The first generation of drones didn't have any image stabilization. But now, we've got things like the Mavic Air, which is 4K and it's a stabilized gimbal. So we went back and we refilmed a lot of stuff, and then Rod Scarf, he's done amazing drone footage of Avebury, and there's a TV special all about Avebury and Stonehenge on the Enigma channel, and that's about how the ley line energy, this electromagnetic energy, this network grid of energy lines, are really basically concentrated at certain points on the planet by these megalithic stone circles. And in my TV special, you can see that the reason that Avebury Stone Circle and Stonehenge and all these stone circles were created is because they were inserting these giant stones into the Earth's crust, the same as an acupuncturist inserts needles into the skin of a patient.
Right.
It's to actually stimulate the chi energy, or it's known as prana in India, chi in China. It's known as the Kalahari Bushmen, who you can see in my new movie. They call it num. The energy is known as num. In Easter Island and Polynesia and Melanesia, this energy is known as mana.
Sure.
Mana energy.
Wow.
So the stone circles are essentially taking this Earth electromagnetic force that runs along the ley lines, and they're concentrating it into the circular formations. Because usually you have a ditch that's called the cursus that runs on the outside of these large stone circles. Then you have a bank that's known as the actual henge itself, and that dams in the energy into the actual circular area.
Wow. Yeah, I bet you must be happy they came out with drones so you don't have to lean out of planes anymore like you did.
I know, because for many years I used to use a helicopter company, and the first thing, whenever I booked up a helicopter, they used to say, "Oh, right, is that guy coming along again?" Because I always used to ask them to unbolt the door. We used to fly around with one door off.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
But so drones have made it a lot safer.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it's
Yeah, and obviously it's you can go much lower. In my film we land a drone on top of Stonehenge.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So you can see real close-up detail with a drone, which it's the first time this has ever been seen by the human. I'm sending my drones into places that the human eye has not seen for thousands of years. There's a dagger that is actually carved into one of the stones of Stonehenge.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Wow. I've got a mini drone which I take inside cathedrals, and we fly it right up into the roof of some of these Gothic cathedrals that were funded by the Knights Templar in Spain and France. And you can see for the first time carved gargoyles and the faces of these weird spirits that are carved, and they're right high up in the ceiling where, you know, nobody's seen those since the stonemasons themselves placed those stones and those wooden carvings there, you know, back in the 12th century.
Wow. That's really cool, because it's like that's a window into history completely.
It is, yeah. I mean, you know, I've got quite a lot of drones. The really tiny ones, they're literally the size of a butterfly.
Wow.
Oh, really?
And they're the ones that you fly inside because you know, it doesn't do any damage. You know, it's so light. If it bumps into something, it doesn't cause any harm to these structures.
Do they have a camera on them as well?
Also, they're very cheap. So if you lose one, you know, you don't care because it's only like $50.
Do they have cameras on them?
Oh yeah. The cameras aren't very good.
Right.
So what we do is we use a 1080 high definition mini camera, and we connect that to the mini drone.
Oh, really?
It piggybacks on the back of the mini drone. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really exciting stuff. And that's
it is. I mean, you know, we are filming stuff which we ourselves at the Enigma channel, hardly a week goes by where we haven't filmed something we go, oh my God, that's amazing. And that's us who are saying it. So, but now there's underwater drones, and this is the new thing which we're getting into. The advantage of the underwater drones is that you've got a lot more time and you can relax because the underwater drones actually have a permanent line attached to them.
Oh, okay.
Whereas, you know, when you dive, you're always limited by your air.
Sure.
Whereas with a tethered underwater drone, you know, this is a whole new world to us.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you as I say, it doesn't ever run out of electricity because it's got a tether.
And the tether feeds it the power as well?
Wow.
It has the power, and it also gives you the 1080 signal, the video signal, back to the boat. So, you know, you just throw down the anchor, and it can stay down there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, can stay down there all the time.
Oh, that is so cool.
Whereas when you dive, as I say, you've always got this, you're always under a time limit because of the air.
Right.
And also, you know, there is something, I don't know, if you're sitting with a 32-inch HD screen and you're dry and you're in the cabin on the boat, and you're looking at the feed coming from the underwater drone, you kind of see more than when you're looking through goggles or looking through a dive mask.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's a very, you know, it's kind of, it's putting a whole new thing on it. I mean, you'll see the new footage has got the Moai statue that's underwater off the coast of Easter Island, which I don't think many people have seen.
Yeah, I know I haven't, so that'll be really cool.
Yeah. So that's all on the Enigma channel. And in actual fact, if these underwater drones get 4K cameras and are improved slightly, I mean, they're already pretty good. But if there's a few improvements which we need, if we can improve them, then we will dedicate an entire TV series to underwater drone diving of ancient sites.
That'd be awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, but we've already started making a pilot show, and it's going to be called Deep Secrets.
Oh, that's a great title. Deep Secrets. I like that.
Yeah, because there's a few sites. There was 52 ancient boats discovered in the Caspian Sea just recently.
Oh wow.
Oh.
They date back from the time of the Hellenistic Greco-Roman Egyptian Empire. Yeah.
Speaking of the Egyptians, I was watching one of your streams or one of your videos that you put out there, and I was really fascinated to see you have proof that there was actual trade going on between the ancient Egyptians and the Americas.
That's right. That's right. I mean, off the coast of Long Island, they found 2 Roman boats full of earthenware jars that were filled with wine. And that's off the coast of Long Island. So the Romans were definitely doing business back in the time of the Roman Empire. But there's a TV, this goes back about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I did a TV special about the Olmecs.
Yeah.
And the Olmec people, the word Olmec means rubber, which is a really racist, horrible term, because these people were one of the most advanced civilizations which we've ever had. And we know that Ramesses II, he was the richest man in the ancient world, one of the great Egyptian pharaohs. When his mummy was given to the Museum of Mankind to be renovated, they discovered that he had cocaine and he had tobacco. In actual fact, there was a tobacco beetle found in his mummified linen bandages.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Now, the tobacco beetle only lives in the USA.
That is amazing.
So how did this Egyptian mummy have a beetle from the USA wrapped into his bandages?
See, that is just earth-shattering. That redefines history. That rewrites history.
It does. It totally rewrites history. It's actually, I've dedicated 1.5 chapters in my book, Stone Age Psychedelia, all to King Ramesses and the discoveries of the toxicological analysis of his lung tissue shows that he was snorting cocaine all of his life.
Wow.
And the coca plant did not grow in Egypt. It only came from America.
Yeah.
So it shows that the Olmec civilization was flourishing at the same time as the dynastic civilization of ancient Egypt. And the Olmecs were most probably, I've traced them back to Japan.
Really?
Yeah, they probably started in Japan. They then seeded all of what we call Oceania, which is, all of the South Pacific Islands. They are probably the people of the Maori of New Zealand.
Yep.
And then eventually they went on to Easter Island, and they made their way to the land bridge between North and South America, Mesoamerica.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it's never, you never hear of Japan, anything originating. You don't hear about the migration of Japan. You hear about the migration of China, and then up through the Bering Strait, which is through Russia, all that area.
Yeah.
But you never hear about Japan actually migrating out. That's weird.
No, they are actually this is another TV special. It's all on enigmachannel.com. There is a Jomon special on the Enigma channel. The Jomon people had earthenware pots. They had weaving. They were weaving rope. They had animal husbandry, and they had their own art galleries where they were making objects of art just to enjoy before the Great Flood.
Wow. Well, Chris,
the Jomon culture goes back 15,000 BC at least.
Wow.
And they are the most advanced civilized kind of culture that we know of. I mean, this is way older than Göbekli Tepe. I mean,
wow.
There's a lot of people stumbling around with wobbly cameras on YouTube who, just basically all these crackpot stupid theories, and they don't do any research. But if you look at Japan, this is the crucible of civilization, not Iraq, not Turkey. It's Japan.
Wow. Okay.
Well, we got just about a minute left. Do you want to tell people how to stay in touch with what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, my kinds of shows, I've only got a handful of shows on YouTube because my shows get deleted because the mainstream don't like me. So, get yourselves a subscription at enigmachannel.com, or if you don't like watching TV and you prefer reading books, I write books, and I've got a new edition of my book, Stone Age Psychedelia, which is 518 pages, and you can check it out on my website. It's ChristopherEverard.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much again for being here.
That's okay, guys. Keep up the good work. Keep doing the broadcasts.
Excellent. We sure will, and thank you for making it better. But, ladies and gentlemen, that about wraps up the Portal for tonight. Stick around for Jimmy Jean and Rio for Into the Microcosm, and join us tomorrow night for The Bear is coming back for some more Bigfoot question and answers here on the Portal. So don't miss it. Love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, and we'll see you tomorrow night here on the Portal.
Good night, all.
Take care.